Well, I'm coming to you from the stairs of our new house because furniture still has not arrived yet. Looking at the time, it should be here probably within the next hour and a half. So everything has been moved forward about 24 hours. Um, Great week to take a look at spiritual pathways and making sure that devotions and things like that are not done in a cookie cutter method because there is no cookie cutter this week for sure. Um, so when I looked at the one size fits all components of this, I don't think anything I've ever done had a one size fits all. So until recently, most of the churches which um, I attended both in my youth and in my young adulthood didn't offer anything for spiritual enhancement throughout the week. So there were things like the Our Daily Bread that was available, and there was always like a Bible study that you could sign up for. But other than that, there was never really anything to enhance. There was no discussion about what prayer should look like or how to engage in spiritual disciplines. So about 4 or 5 years ago, we finally attended a United States or a UMC church, and so with that, we had the opportunity to have something different. And then when it talks about comparing my spiritual pathway with somebody else, I don't think it was like the idea that Thomas said on the back cover of coveting your neighbor's spiritual path, but I know I did compare a couple times to go, wow, they have something. They have something that I haven't been able to learn yet. So how do I engage? What do I do? And I remember talking with several people that were several years older than me to go, hey, what do you do? How do you engage? What type of things can I take a look at? And instead of giving me a cookie cutter aspect of what to do next, I always really appreciated the fact that they took the time to say, hey, have you taken a look at this book? Or take a look at like Experiencing God by Blackaby, or A Shepherd's Look at the 23rd Psalm, or something that was a little more in depth that gave other components to it. That way it wasn't, well, you're supposed to spend time or you're supposed to read or study, but it was giving like aspects on how to do it. As well, sometimes I know there was a sermon series that went out sometime during my second tour that talked about being able to read 1 Peter with how to underline in a different way. So underlining in one color for like a vertical expectation. So how do we interact with God? And underlining with a different color for how do we interact with each other? And gave me a new way of looking at study, that it wasn't this is the only way, but hey, take a look at this. Here's a new component. And so when I looked at Thomas's spiritual pathways here, there were three that were just leaping off the page for me. And one of them was enthusiasts. So for me, prayer is often guitar in hand. I will spend probably more time playing certain songs. There are probably more tears on the edge of my guitar than there should be. I don't have to worry about the humidity level, I guess, just because that's kind of how I engage. That's one of the great ways. Or celebration, like dancing around the house. My boys think I'm absolutely nuts. But the music is always rolling. Sometimes it's quiet, but most of the time it's just there, and it's a chance to kind of to rock within the house, as they say. And I always love which ones that I hear them play later as they kind of develop their own playlists. So as much as I love that, there's actually the first thing that went up on the wall here about an hour ago from my husband was something that says pray, worship, praise. And that's a plaque that went above our stairs here. And it was just, when seeing it, it was perfect. It was designed for how this house works, how our lives kind of engage with this. So as much as I love the music, as much as I love celebration, there's also part of me that I desperately want to have that quiet time. And so the aesthetics aspect of it is definitely, if I have a couple hours that I can just sit there quietly studying in prayer as well, like that also rings true to me, because I can do both sides. I can do that extroverted outside aspects, and then I also have to have that introverted, pull it back in, just kind of engage in quiet back to back. And then if you want to roll all of it together, throw me outside in nature, because I absolutely love being able to be outside in nature. And looking back on it, reading all of this, I sat there and I was like, where do I write most of my papers? So back in Missouri, we had a patio that wrapped across the entire back side of our house. If you sat on one side of it and you did a 45-degree angle each direction, so 45 degrees, you saw the woods. They had a nature trail that you could actually walk through it. And if you turned the other direction 45 degrees from where you sat, and you could see the rolling hills all the way down to the pond. And if you look straight ahead, you got to see the back of the church building because we lived in one of the parsonages back there. So I would spend most of my time sitting out there writing papers, writing sermons, doing my devotions in the morning. It was that quietness, or even better, was out there in nature with guitar in hand, playing, practicing for worship, doing that kind of stuff. Um, Even here, like in Michigan, there's when we lived with our friends, there was this pond at the back of their yard, and it was out behind the barn. And my husband used to mow the lawn. That was one of our agreements when we moved in. And he cut this little hidey hole area right into the edge of the pond. And he had to walk down a ways, down a trail to be able to get to me, but nobody knew where I was. And so I could be out there in the quietness of nature and being able to just be away from anybody I needed to, just to have that moment. And for me, that was a combination of multiple different things. Um, and sometimes, even out in nature, there would be the headphones in and listening to the music while sitting there alone with everything else and just kind of blending all of them together. But those were the elements that kind of spoke to me.